To overcome costing paper 2, we are in chapter number 2, and let us now go for the practical problem. The example is on the allocation of overheads. I'll read out the example for you. Atlas Limited, Anand, has 2 production department and 2 service department. They provide you the following data for the period ended 31st March 2015. There are particulars. Direct material for production department P1 and P2, it is 30,000 and 20,000. For service department, it is 20,000 and 10,000. The same way, direct wages 20,000, 15,000, 10,000 and 5,000 respectively, and indirect expenses are 10,000, 10,000. For service department 1, it is 5,000, and service department 2, it is 2,500. Indirect material is there 8,000, 8,000, 8,000 and 8,000 for all 4 departments, and indirect wages are 2,500, 2,500, 5,000 and 2,500. Common indirect expenses during the period were 20,000. You are required to prepare the statement showing allocation of overheads for the period ended 31st March 2015. Now we just have to do the allocation of overheads and not the allocation of all the expenses. That means over here we will not include this indirect material, indirect labor, we will not include this direct material, wages and expenses only for the production department. For this, not include this part, but we'll take into consideration this part because this is service department. All the direct expenses of service department are overheads. Okay, so first we'll allocate as it is the total of direct material, wages and expenses to the service department as given in the problem, and then we'll think of allocation of the various department of production and service overheads as it is given in the problem. Now there is one instruction down over here that common indirect expenses during the period were 20,000. Common indirect expenses. We'll think of that in the problem answer. Now let us see how they are presented. Now the amount of this direct material, direct wages and direct expenses is written as it is in the answer like this, and this part, and only over here in the production department nothing is mentioned, that is this part is kept empty, but same figures 8,000 each for the indirect material and direct wages, 2,500 for department P1, P2 and S2, and service department 1, 5,000. It is written as it is. Now what about the additional information given regarding the indirect expenses? What about this information over here, that common expenses during the period? Now we are not going to do anything on this just because there is no information how to allocate this kind of expenditure among all these 4 departments. So this is a very simple allocation, just the expenses are allocated as it is to the various department. Now we should go to next process, that is apportionment of overheads. We have seen what is apportionment. Certain overhead cost cannot be directly charged to a department or cost center. Such costs are common to a number of cost centers or cost departments and do not originate from any specific department. Distribution of such overhead cost to various departments is known as apportionment. Thus, apportionment may be defined as the allocation of proportion of item of cost to cost center or cost units. In other words, it is charging to a cost center as fair share of an overheads where an item of overhead is common to various cost centers. It is allotted to different cost centers proportionately on some equitable basis. We have seen in the previous audio lecture that a basis is required to apportion the overhead. Again, taking the case of rent, it cannot be allocated, it is apportioned to various departments. Rent is for the total factory. Now what we do, we apportion means we distribute the total amount of rent to various departments of production and service departments. That distribution is called apportionment, making the small part of the total overhead expenditure. Now on what basis we divide it? It on the basis of the floor area occupied. Similarly, salary of a general manager cannot be allocated wholly to any one department, as general manager attend all the departments, so it should be their apportion on equitable basis. But apportionment of fire insurance, lighting, heating, timekeeping, etc., canteen expenses, all other welfare expenses are also to be apportioned. In short, apportionment of overhead is a process of charging the proportion of common item of cost to two or more cost centers or on some equitable basis. Equitable basis means some basis on which it is apportioned. Actual benefit or potential benefit or ability to pay or services to use, etc. Where only one electric meter is installed in a factory, the common electricity charges should be apportioned to all the departments on the basis of number of light points or the floor area occupied. So for the general electricity there are two bases, either number of light point per department or the area occupied by the department. Factory rent is incurred for a factory as a whole and benefit of all the department is in the factory, hence it should be apportioned on the basis of the floor area occupied. Now we should quickly see the distinction between allocation of overheads and apportionment of overheads. What is allocation? Allocation deals with the whole item of cost, whereas apportion deals with the proportion of item of cost. Allocation is direct, whereas apportionment is on some equitable basis. Number 2, in allocation the cost is allocated directly. In apportionment the costs are distributed on a proportionate basis. Number 3, allocation is a direct process, apportionment is an indirect process. Number 4, overheads cannot be allocated directly to the product. This is correct. And in apportionment it is possible to charge expense indirectly through the apportionment and absorb the cost in a final product. Number 5, overhead should always be allocated if possible. If direct allocation is possible, then only allocation is done. Otherwise, apportionment is required. If overheads cannot be allocated, it has to be apportioned. Number 6, this is known as departmentization of overheads. Means the overheads are simply gathered to a particular department, or primary distribution of overheads, whereas it is known as primary distribution of overhead cost. Number 7, it is the process of allocating or charging a whole item of overheads to a department or cost center. Apportionment, it is allocation of proportion of item of cost to a cost center or cost unit. It is the distribution of common cost to different departments on some suitable basis. Okay, and now there are types of departments. Some list is there.